I'm over it. I'm over hiding, doubting, over beating myself up. Money shame impacts all of us. And I've been hiding mine because I felt like as a financial therapist, I should be the shining example of what to do and what not to do. But by hiding my money shame, I've become something else, a hypocrite. In today's episode, I am holding nothing back about money shame and how it shows up in us and sharing with you guys what I have been going through. Stay tuned. Welcome to Mind, Money, Balance. I'm Lindsay, a popcorn lover, woman of color, and financial therapist and coach. This is the No Guilt, No Shame podcast to help you stand in your financial power. Let's go. Let's just start out with a quick reminder of what the difference is between guilt and shame. So guilt and shame are often exchanged in the way that we use them. We will say, oh, I felt guilty about that, or I felt shame about that. But they're a little bit different. And the main difference between guilt and shame is that guilt is a little bit more external, right? You feel guilty that you didn't turn something into your boss on time. You feel guilty that you left your lunch at home. But shame is feeling like you are bad, right? So it's that you are lazy or bad or you are wrong. And it's not that you did something wrong, but that you are wrong. It's the embodiment of the guilt. And when it comes to money, guilt can quickly spiral into shame. So we can feel guilty about overspending in a certain area of our budget, or we can feel guilty that we didn't pay off debt as quickly as we'd hoped. And what can happen is that guilt over overspending or not paying off our debt as quickly as we'd hoped, it can turn into shame. It can turn into feeling like we are bad. I talked about this with Melanie Lockhart, who wrote the book Dear Debt, and she had an amazing article in Allure magazine that I had the honor of being quoted in about the link between debt and suicide. And one thing that I shared with her is that as humans, we have a really hard time separating out our actions from being reflections of us. And by that, I mean a lot of Americans have this belief that debt is bad. And because they have debt, that they are bad. That is a huge example of money shame, of internalizing an action or a behavior and saying, this is me. So I want to share with you how my money shame has shown up and how it has contributed to my business and also what I am doing to actively combat the shame. And here's the thing about shame and about guilt. It's like the more we hide them, the more they grow. That's why we hear this term shame spiral, right? It's this idea that if we feel bad about ourselves, then we start to see the things that we aren't proud of in our life, and they compound upon those feelings of feeling bad about ourselves, and it spirals and it spirals and it gets deeper and darker and bigger. And shame grows when we don't talk about it, when we keep it hidden, when we keep it piled up, when we keep it locked away. It like rots us. And so that's why I'm sharing my story today. And my hope is that you see that, yeah, I'm a financial therapist. Yes, I'm a social worker. And yes, I can and will make mistakes. I'm going to curse in this episode, not because I think that I have to, but because you'll see why as I get going. So a couple of years ago, as I pivoted into private practice, it meant I was an entrepreneur. And stepping into something like entrepreneurship came along with a lot of noise. So when I started out in my private practice journey, I kind of followed a similar path that I had seen laid out for me, which is to get an office, to fill up your calendar with clients, and that once you do that, you have the golden ticket. It just didn't work out that way for me. As I filled my practice, it didn't quite fill up my soul in the way that I thought it would. I was seeing clients who weren't perfect fits for me, who I wasn't a perfect fit for them, because that's what I was told or internalized that was what a good private practice therapist does. They fill up their practice. And so I knew that wasn't it. I knew that I wanted more. I couldn't pinpoint it. I loved the parts of being in business where I got to play around with my website. And so I did what a lot of people do. I turned to Google and I started Googling things about private practice, about entrepreneurship. And like many of you, if you're out there and you're a small business owner, or if you're not a small business owner, but you can relate to going down a Google wormhole or rabbit hole, it really quickly just took off. It went from listening to a podcast about private practice to watching YouTube videos about private practice. That then led me to entrepreneurship, that then led me to service-based providers. And what I found my entire phone was full of was all of this information from other entrepreneurs on how to scale your perfect business and how to hit 6 figures without burning yourself out. And they were saying all the things that sounded so intriguing. And I did what a lot of people do, and I dove right in, and I started listening and taking notes and sitting in on the webinars and buying courses and hiring business coaches. And the more I listened to other people and put myself in the backseat of no longer listening to my own expertise, I started losing myself. I started doing all these things like different things to market myself and to drive traffic to my website. And it looked like, making sure that I had a beautiful Pinterest page and being really active on Facebook and making sure I was uploading videos to YouTube and writing email newsletters so my newsletter subscribers wouldn't forget about me, and tweeting and retweeting and then being on LinkedIn. And as I almost always forget, I wrote a fucking book. Which is also why I'm cursing in this episode, because somewhere I read or heard, who knows, that if I curse in my podcast, it gets marked explicit, which it does, but it means that less people will listen. So I didn't want to mess with the potential of people listening or not listening to me if there was the E for explicit in my podcast, which is why for many of my podcast episodes, if you have been a listener since the beginning, thank you, I say things like F and ish instead of fucking shit. And I'm not going to do that anymore. It doesn't mean I need to curse. It's just that sometimes a swear word feels better, and I'm not going to allow a random person who said that the E on my podcast is going to mean less people hear it. So that is why I'm swearing today. Oh yeah, and you guys are listening to me on a podcast, so I also have that. But with all of this doing, the doubt creeped in. And as the doubt creeped in, and as my inability to trust myself grew, my business got worse because I started paying other people to tell me what to do. And even though when these people that I was paying said, do this, even when my instinct was to say, that's not for me, I let my inability to tap in with my wisest and highest self take over and believe that this expert, or these experts, I should say, knew better than me because they had done it. And who was I to say that I knew anything fucking better, right? So I veered away from my truth, my power, my instincts. And the more I listened to other people, the more that I floundered. And here's where the money shame comes in. I paid for courses and coaching and ads. And That is not something that aligned with who I am. And I'm not saying that business coaching doesn't have a place. I'm not saying that courses don't have a place. I'm not saying that ads don't have a place. Please don't take that as the message. My message is that I let fear-mongering take my money. And when I let that fear-mongering take my money, I started to go, oh shit, I don't deserve to help people with their money mindset. I don't deserve to teach people how to check in with their values and make sure that they are spending and saving in alignment with their values. I don't deserve to help people understand the 4 financial archetypes, because here I am being a hypocrite and spending my money on things that are not serving me, on believing in anybody and anything but myself. And that money shame has been eating me alive. And I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm really, really stepping into my power and my strength and leaning on the things that I know that I do really fucking well. And I am listening to my gut and listening to my heart and reminding myself that I actually know what's best for my business. I actually know which platforms are going to be best for me. And when I start doing that, when I start stepping into it, when I start saying, yo, this is how I messed up, that shame gets smaller. So journaling about it, tapping on it, talking to my therapist about it, processing it with others, every single time I do something like that, I feel better. Because that shame can only survive if it stays hidden in the deepest, darkest depths of my psyche and in my gut and in my heart. Which is why things are changing around here. I am coming back to myself. I'm coming back to what I do and what I want to do. I love social work for a ton of reasons. That is what my degree is in. I have my master's in social work, and then I got cross-trained in financial therapy and in financial social work. And one of my favorite things about social work is I get to be flexible. I get to serve different groups of people. I get to show up in different ways. A very quick snapshot of my career since having this degree is that I've worked in community mental health centers. I've worked in refugee resettlement. I've worked in psychiatric research. I've worked in group practice. I've worked in private practice. And here I am now saying, I serve couples and individuals, and I'm going to be expanding my offerings. So when I first started thinking about expanding my offerings and doing something new, because I'd internalized all this business noise, all these entrepreneurship podcasts and things and whatnot, I had the word pivot in my head, P-I-V-O-T, pivot. And I started beating myself up again. I went, oh my gosh, there's no way I can pivot again. People are going to think that I'm flip-flopping. They're going to think I'm not successful. They're going to think I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to have to create a new niche. I'm going to have to change all of my website copy, right? I started going in my head. And one of my friends, who is also a small business owner, she said to me, she's like, Lindsay, you're not pivoting. You're expanding, you're adding a new offer. And in her saying that, I could feel my shoulders like go down away from my ears, right? I could feel myself exhale and be like, oh yeah, you are allowed to do more than one thing. Again, with all of these gurus telling you you have to have one niche and one specialty and you can't serve more than one group or you're going to confuse your audience, and confused audiences don't buy. I had all that noise in my head. And I had to start coming back to myself, and it's hard. So if you have experienced money shame, you also know that it's hard. It's hard to forgive yourself for making a mistake, and it's even harder not to even forgive that mistake, but to forgive the things that you have started to internalize about who you are because of a mistake you made. You are not your mistake. You are not your money mistake. You are not your financial mistake. Write that down. Write it down somewhere, put it in your phone. You are not your money mistakes. You are more than that. You are not your money shame. You are more than your money shame. Your money shame doesn't have to be a part of you. You can release it. And I'm working on it. And I'm struggling, but it gets easier every time. It gets easier every single time. So anyway, why is my podcast intro slightly different? If you listen back to past episodes, you'll hear that I do focus on couples because that was my niche, right? I had to stay in my niche. I had to only focus on and serve couples. But I wanted to open it up. I wanted to expand what I'm doing. Oh yeah, let me go full circle with the social work. So the other reason I love social work is because I can choose to change. I can serve more than one person. I can do more than one thing. And I'm not saying I'm going to do 100 things, but I can do 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, right? I can have a clinical arm of my practice where I see clients, and I can also have a consulting arm of my practice where I help other therapists. Coming soon. TBD. Stay tuned. So back to the intro. Okay. So the intro used to say just couples. Now it's more expansive. It's just about having a shame-free relationship with your money. And I leave the you really generic because depending on the week, depending on what I'm feeling in my soul, what I'm feeling in my heart, and what feels best to put out into the world and into your ears is what I'm going to do. I'm no longer chaining myself to this belief that there's only one way to do things, and it's one of those things. It's a hard lesson to learn, and it's an easy lesson to tell other people, but it's so much harder to take your own advice, right? I remember when I first started in private practice going, oh man, I got a lot of work to do, because anytime I talk to one of my clients about anxiety or body image or sleep or exercise, anything, right? It was an invitation to go, are you doing that? Are you practicing what you preach? And I really had to dig in and do a lot of work to make sure that I was practicing what I preached. So I know it's hard. And here I am working on practicing what I preach. It's a work in progress. We are all works in progress. So money shame. Money shame makes it so hard to move forward because once we have internalized that we're bad with money or we don't get it or money isn't for us, then we stop taking action. We stop moving forward. We get in our own heads and we tell ourselves that we can't do it. And it just makes it harder to move forward. It makes it harder to believe ourselves. And the cruel truth about shame is that the way to overcome it is just to face it, right? So when it comes to money shame, you have to do something. You have to look at your bills. You have to negotiate for a raise. You have to pay somebody back. You have to actually take action. And that is really hard. It's really hard to take action. So if you have money shame, if my story today about putting money towards things that I thought were going to help but didn't, how many of us have done that? We've bought a product because we thought it was going to change our lives and no, just sat in our cupboard or in our closet, right? We've all done that. I know I'm not alone. But if this resonates, I want to really help. I really want to help. I don't know exactly who yet, right? I'm not getting caught up on my ideal client or building a client avatar right now. I'm not doing that. For all my entrepreneurs, you know what I'm talking about. We've all done those avatar worksheets. But right now, what feels good in my heart and in my soul is to throw a freaking party. To say fuck you to the money shame. This one is specifically for women, and that's women with an X. But it's because women specifically have been told they don't belong in money. They're bad at it. They can't be trusted with it. They shouldn't trust themselves with it. So I've created a money shame. Let me try that again, RJ. I've created a money shame release party just for women. It is where we are going to say goodbye to the shameful money stories that are holding us back from standing in our own power and listening to our own guts and listening to our own hearts. And I'm hosting it on a full moon because guess what? As I have talked about before, science and spirituality can coexist. And for me, that also means sometimes tapping into things that are bigger than myself. And over the past year and a half-ish, but particularly over the last few months, amidst the racial revolution that we are experiencing, I've tapped even more into astrology because for me, it has allowed me to connect with my ancestors on a deeper level. And if that's too woo for you, all good, no worries. You can unsubscribe, you can skip this episode, no harm. So, why a full moon? Because a full moon is a great place to let go of the things that are not serving you. So we plant seeds on new moons and then we harvest on full moons. And we can also let go of stuff on full moons. So how this money shame release party is going to work is that we will meet together on Zoom. It will not be recorded. It will not be replayed because I want the space to be protected. And it is for women and people who identify as women. They are welcome to come, and you can pay whatever you want to pay between $47 and $97. So it makes it accessible to many people. So you can kind of choose where on that scale it feels good for you to pay. And I believe in paying for things because I do believe in an exchange of money for services. And this is not for those of you who are entrepreneurs or who have shown up to a webinar thinking it was going to be something and then it turned out to be like a bait and switch. I've been trained on that method and that is not going to happen. There will be no bait and switch. It will only be a money shame release party. I will not do an upsell at the end. There will not be a VIP suite, okay? It is exactly what you see is what you get. You pay $47, you pay $97, you pay somewhere in the middle, and you get to come. We will cultivate a space of safety. I will talk about money shame. I will talk about the power of the full moon. And I will invite you to journal on your money shame and to share and release that shame to start moving through that mess and really move toward healing. This is a safe space. It is a brave space. And I would love to see you there. If my story has resonated with you in any way and you're going, oh, I could use a little bit of that release, then come. It'll be Monday, August 3rd, 2020, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And the details will be at the link in this podcast description. If you are listening to this on YouTube, it will be in the YouTube description. But let's say goodbye to it. Let's say goodbye to all the things that aren't serving us when it comes to our money. And if you want to do your own little money shame party, if coming doesn't work for you, if you want to do this yourself, you can. But I'm telling you right now, it feels really, really good to say it out loud. It feels really good to have your shame be heard and for somebody to say, it's okay, we can move forward. I'm telling you. I mean, I wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't believe in the human capacity to change, right? So if you want to do this yourself, go for it. Write down the money shame that is coming up for you, how it's holding you back, and what you want to do instead. That's it. You can do it. And if you want more, if you want a space that will be led by me, a financial therapist who is imperfect, very, very imperfect, please come. And thank you. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for allowing me the space to say out loud what's been going on in my head. And stay tuned because I can feel something big coming and I'm excited to share it with you. Really excited. Take care. If you love this episode, take a screenshot and tag me on Instagram at MindMoneyBalance with your favorite takeaway. I love seeing what resonates with my listeners and sharing it in my stories. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week right here. Neither the host or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, medical, or other professional information. If you want professional help, please seek it out.